We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I cannot be held responsible for any loopy ththings I might say during this podcast recording.
Yes, it's at the end of the workday too. So,
yes.
It's the brains have been used already.
I think all three of us are morning people.
Oh, yes. Very much.
And so throughout the day, our brains start to kind of just go downhill. But don't worry, it's going to be a great episode.
Great episode.
Don't worry.
Yeah, great episode. Dude, it's always a great episode when you have silly putty Mokele Mbembe.
I'm working on him. I killed him, and now I'm going to make him again.
Yeah, EJ has silly putty and is making dinosaurs out of the silly putty.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I have a hand injury, and I'm supposed to be using it as therapy putty, but instead it's my monster putty.
Dino putty.
Dino putty.
Look at him.
He's cute.
The important question is, are you making it with snack pouches?
Oh, now I am. Now I am. Look, now he's a snack pouch.
Snack pouch is incoming.
Yeah, why am I shaping my silly putty into dinosaurs? Well, we're not done talking about dinosaurs. We've got another episode. We're going to go deeper into the jungles.
They were real deep into the jungle, and that's because I'm going to do it because you didn't do it. We are slaying monsters.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! And so you're sitting here with EJ.
Hello.
And we got Katie.
Hi.
And I'm Maddie J. And we're going to talk about some living dinosaurs. Maybe, but probably not. So in our last episode, we explored the concept of neo-dinosaurs, the idea that there are living sauropods in Africa, and how that entered mid-century cryptozoological thinking. Thanks to Bernard Heuvelmans and his stubborn desire to interpret all folklore and mythology as actual animals instead of just fantastical beasts, Mokele Mbembe was now being considered a real creature by fringe biologists or romantic zoologists. Among these were Loch Ness researcher Roy P. Mackall and James Powell Jr. Powell himself had traveled to Gabon, where he'd heard stories of giant, long-necked creatures roaming their waterways and their lakes. Enlisting Mackall, Powell returned to Africa in 1980 to seek out this legendary dinosaur, the Mokele Mbembe, supposedly a sauropod like a brontosaurus.
Also, it's kind of crazy that we're in 1980. Like, in my brain, it's 1924, and they're, venturing around. And I'm like, no, these are very modern people who should have known better.
It really should be. I mean, we've had, Star Wars at this point, they're flying off to Africa, and back in America, people are using snap bracelets, right? Like that's the time that we're in. It's kind of crazy.
Snap bracelets were the peak of humanity.
They really were.
All downhill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the pair of scientists flew from Chicago to Paris, where they actually consulted with Heuvelmans, and he gave them some of his reference books. And then their next flight brought them to the Republic of Congo and then the People's Republic of the Congo, which was a communist state established by a complex revolution in the 1960s that's way too much of a tangent for us to get into on our Silly Little Dinosaur podcast. The important takeaway is that the scientists, they're not just venturing into a region with natural dangers, like malaria, leopards, at least not exclusively those natural dangers. This is a very politically volatile region in the latter half of the Cold War. So, I mean, they're going to a remote location, but there's still a good amount of, kind of political sidestepping and palm greasing and stuff that they had to do in order to even get to the site of their search. Powell's contact in the region was Pastor Eugene Thomas, who was an Ohio minister doing missionary work in the region. Pastor Gene, that's what they called him. Now, he's been in the region since 1955, about 25 years at this point. He's a very, very devout Christian, and he truly believed that his calling in life was to share the gospel with the indigenous Bantu people, and he dedicated himself to that. That was his whole intention. But the thing about this is that you have this challenge of getting in from a political side of this, right? But the way you can kind of sneak your way in there is by doing missionary work. And so they were able to sort of insinuate themselves in with Pastor Gene and his missionary trip as a way to help themselves along and make the political machinations work in their favor.
So they had to pretend to care about missionary work?
Well, not necessarily, no, but from a like on paper, from a standpoint like that, it was much easier to be like, oh, I'm doing missionary work than to say I'm going and looking for dinosaurs.
So if they were like, oh, they basically made friends with this guy, and then he could be like, oh, these people are coming to help me. Like he could vouch for them, or they could put on paper that that's where they were going, and then it was missionary work and they could just get in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Things are just easier. They're easier if you're spreading Christianity.
Cool.
Right? Now, Mackle remarked that as soon as he met Pastor Gene, he felt that this guy was sizing up his faith. From the way he described him, I get the sense that Pastor Gene is the kind of guy who just kind of casually talks about the Bible and Jesus like they're old buddies. And he's like the kind of person who's always secretly judging you on how pious you are. You know, so that kind of dude, right? Pastor Gene is going to serve as the guide and translator for the duration of this expedition. And he got to work right away. So he introduced them to the locals who claimed to have seen a snake-like head on a long neck while canoeing the Likualau Alzerb River. Seeing their dinosaur book nearby that they'd gotten from Heuvelmans, one of the witnesses actually pointed to a brontosaurus and said, "That's what I saw in the river." And so everybody got really excited about that, including Pastor Gene. This trio, Mackle, Powell, and Eugene Thomas, will spend the next several weeks tramping through the jungle, living in local villages, and just trying to talk to anybody who will have a conversation with them and claim to see the Mokele Mbembe. One of these, Marion Ikole, described several encounters with an alleged sauropod over a meal of pork and beans, and said this.
When Mokele Mbembe surfaces, the water is violently displaced and great waves wash over the shore. If one is engulfed by this miniature tidal wave, one will be sucked back into the deep water.
And
in the time of the past, a number of people were fleeing from death and danger. They were able to cross a river, hindering their escape by walking across on the tail, the back of the body, and the long neck of a Mokele Mbembe that had positioned itself directly across the river as a convenient bridge.
Yeah, so something happened. These villagers were fleeing from whatever this danger and death was. And Mokele Mbembe stretched across the river and made a bridge that they could run across its back to cross the river.
It's very sweet and Disney, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
It is. It's cute that but I also am curious, like, why are they afraid of it? I don't know. Maybe they're not afraid of it. Maybe this story is to say, like, it's here, but it's helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the way it's described is sort of like any other animal. Not necessarily something that you live in absolute fear of, but something that you need to be cautious around sometimes. And, but sometimes it helps you by making itself into a bridge.
Sure.
Mackle called these stories apocryphal in his book, but his takeaway was still that Mokele Mbembe was big enough to span a river. He believed that part of it. And I guess if you take the story at face value, that's true. But to me, this all sounds very much like a folktale and was never really meant to be taken literally. The problem with this line of thinking, the same problem that we keep coming back to, is that these researchers couldn't conceive that the indigenous tribes could imagine anything more creative than what was immediately in front of them. To Mackle, Powell, and now Pastor Gene, these people are telling historical truth, not invented myth.
That's crazy that even someone like Pastor Gene would think that, because
he's been there 25 years. Yeah.
Jesus. Racism is a real mindfuck, you know?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
so he thought for 25 years that every folktale he ever heard was a real story? Oh my goodness. Yep. Okay.
I really do find that so hard to believe. It's crazy.
I start to think Pastor Gene is the dum-dum. I mean, Pastor Gene is also the one that thinks that the Bible stories are real too. So, you know, maybe it's on him. He doesn't know how to understand a tale.
That's a
lesson,
good point.
You know?
That's a very good point. I think when people look at the Bible like it's a true story beginning to end, then when other people tell them their equivalent stories, they can't see it as anything else but that. And I think that really bleeds into the daily critical thinking issues too. So I think you're right, Katie, that didn't think about that before, but that's probably why it happened that way.
Maybe. I don't know. I was making fun of Pastor Gene, but I think you could be right too. Like he's a literal man, you know?
Very literal. Everything's very literal.
Yes,
right.
He's a very literal man. Now, all the stories that they were gathering seemed to place Mokele Mbembe in the vicinity of Lake Tele, a freshwater lake in the Epena region of the Republic of Congo. And that all made sense because Lake Tele was unbelievably remote. Honestly, it still is. They had to drive overnight to literally the end of the road and then hike all day through the jungle with no possibility of rescue, mind you. If they couldn't make good enough time to get to Lake Tele in that day of hiking, they would need to camp in the swamp for the night, leaving them exposed not only to leopards, but also to the gorillas that frequented that region. And of course, an endless legion of venomous snakes like the puff adder and the black mamba, which terrifies me.
Mm-hmm. So, like, what was at Lake Tele, though? Was there actually like a place where they could be safe?
Well, that was
established place.
That was where the reports were coming out of, and yes, so there was a village there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that they're ultimately headed toward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yes, but I'm with you, Matt. I mean, obviously, the leopards and the gorillas are also scary, but my main fear would be the snakes. 100%. Because no.
Also, you know, they went to the end of the road and then they're walking through the jungle. They're not really walking on paths, you know, like they're using a bit of dead reckoning to get there. They're cutting paths as they go. It's very, very, very remote.
God, they could be stepping on anything. They can't even see where they're stepping.
Yeah. And then on top of all of the animals and all of that, they're not even the most dangerous hazards because temperatures were averaging 90 degrees, spiking up to 100 degrees with high humidity. All throughout their journey, they were beset by mosquitoes, biting flies, and fire ants.
Ugh.
And any patch of water that they saw that was bigger than a puddle, first you had to stop and scan and see if there were any hippos or crocodiles in it.
Yeah. Can I also just say that I hate mosquitoes? Like, I cannot
Suck.
imagine, because those are probably enormous mosquitoes too. And they're just, ugh, no.
Yeah.
All of it. I just hate it all.
All of it. Hate it all.
Yeah.
The only sort of good thing about the mosquitoes is that I believe that you need populations of humans in order to transmit malaria. It's not like malaria is naturally carried by mosquitoes. They bite a human that has malaria and then they transmit it to another human. So once you get far enough in the jungle, you're no longer worried about malaria because there's nobody around. So I guess there's that, but yeah.
Yeah. But I bet that's really itchy, though.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
I mean, it is the 80s, so I hope they had good gear and bug spray and stuff like that.
Actually, in the 80s, they probably like covered themselves with DEET, which is very poisonous. So yeah, they were probably fine. So after this very long, arduous trek through the jungle, they arrived at the village, this Peña that is on Lake Tele. And here, the trio of researchers questioned President Kolonga, who was sort of a mayoral figure there. Again, Pastor Jean is translating, and Mackle questioned the president about Mokele Mbembe. But President Kolonga was quick to rebuff their line of inquiry.
The president smiled at the words Mokele Mbembe, declaring that the term only meant rainbow. I was taken aback by this remark, which seemed incredible in light of the information we had accumulated.
Pastor Jean pressed on, talking about Mokele Mbembe as if it was a real creature, saying, oh no, people killed it with spears. But President Kolonga thought that the whole thing was a joke being played at his expense, and so he had a very hearty laugh with these guys and then dismissed them. Think about this. This is devastating because they've had all this planning. They've had all this work to just to get to Africa, to figure out all the political side of getting here. Then you drive to the middle of nowhere. You walk an entire day through these horrible conditions, and the dude you're talking to is like, nah, it's not real. Think about how that feels.
Well, it's about the journey, not the destination. That's what I would tell him.
I also kind of love it because to me, it's like him being like, yeah, no, that's not it. And I bet that those guys didn't believe him. They were like, oh no, this man is mistaken. He just hasn't heard what we've heard. And it's like, those are his people.
No.
Yeah. What did they think about that?
You're absolutely right, Katie. The thought that Mackle and Powell had is, oh, they see us as outsiders. We have to figure out how to ingratiate ourselves, and then they'll trust us, and then they'll tell us the truth.
Wow.
By the time night fell, the mood had shifted, and Mackle and Powell received a message that the president would actually speak with them again. And he said now he had been impressed by the truth that was in their eyes and decided that he would actually tell them the real story of Mokele Mbembe. That morning, everyone gathered in his quarters. And here we're introduced to several residents of the Peña, including a man named Pascal Moteka. He related a story that had been told to him when he was a child about the killing of a Mokele Mbembe that happened just outside their village. Now, in this story, apparently this was the site of a frequent Mokele Mbembe visits. There was a herd of the creatures that were passing through on the way to get to the lake. And the villagers got sick and tired of these creatures trampling through their village and fucking shit up. And so they took sharpened stakes and drove them into the water at the bottom of an inlet and made kind of a makeshift underwater trap. And sure enough, there was a pod of 7 Mokele Mbembes that were crossing the inlet, and they found themselves trapped by the spikes. And so the villagers sprung up and speared one of the creatures to death. Afterward, they held a feast, and everyone cooked and ate the dead Mokele Mbembe. But that was a mistake, because everyone who tasted the flesh of the creature died, because it was poisonous.
Da da da. Are there any poisonous well, okay, yes, the blowfish, which we've talked about here, the pup. But are there any poisonous land animals? Like if you eat the animal, you will die? Maybe parts of... I'm going to Google it right now.
I think a cane toad is poisonous because I think we talked about that in the zombie episode. Yeah, I don't know.
According to AI Overview, there are several highly poisonous animals. The pufferfish, which we already talked about.
Right.
Poison dart frogs.
Okay.
Rough-skinned newt. Some newts secrete toxin in their skin as a defense. And then apparently there are certain birds, but they're like in New Guinea. So it doesn't look like any like big game type of animals like we would be talking about here are poisonous to eat them. I'm just seeing if we have a natural cause here. They ate something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this is a fake animal, but I don't know. I'm just curious.
I mean, I'm sure this didn't even happen, but like they could have caught like a hippo and ate a hippo or something, and the hippo was sick or whatever. And
right. That's all assuming that any of this actually happened.
Exactly.
Right?
Assuming it's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think the interesting detail here is that everyone who ate the creature died, which means there's no one to confirm that any of this actually happened.
Yeah.
So, there's not even anyone you can talk to. This Moteka, the guy who's relating the story, is the only one, and he's only heard about it because, of course, he didn't eat it. He's still alive.
Conveniently, the story has its own like insurance wrapped in it, which is that everyone that could be an eyewitness is dead.
Yes. Now, once those initial floodgates of tale-telling opened, other people started coming forward to give their own accounts. Pastor Jean translates all of this, and the locals start talking about how the Mokele Mbembe lives in caves dug into the mud of the riverbank, and it breached like a hippo and it would break through your fishing nets. And some even talked about other dinosaurs, too. There was one woman who told tales about a spiky animal which roamed the forest and swam in the lake. And she said that algae would grow on its back, and if you saw it, you had to hide behind a tree until it passed. After listening to this description, Mackle became convinced that it was a stegosaurus that was living in the vicinity of the lake. And he wrote this description.
What really stuck in my mind was her phrase, "the animal with planks growing out of its back." So apt a description seemed unlikely to be an invention or mythic creature.
Yeah, because it's impossible to come up with the design for a mythic animal that has spikes on its back. Like, nobody could just come up with that. Come on.
Y'all, like, the animal, Scotland's animal is the unicorn.
Yeah.
We are...
Godzilla existed. This was 1980. Godzilla was
Right.
an animal that existed.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say is that, like, I know that even today in 2026, there are tribes, groups of people that live very isolated from the rest of society, right? From the quote unquote modern world. However, one, as we've already discussed, all of those people are perfectly capable on their own of coming up with lots of mythical, magical creatures and stories. And two, it's 1980. The amount of groups of people that have never come in contact, I don't know the exact number, but the amount of groups of people that have never come in contact with anyone from the quote unquote outside world, particularly at least like a missionary or something like that, is already massively dwindling. Like, to think like, oh, these people could never come up with an animal with spikes on its back. Like, number one, yes, they could. Number two, they've probably heard other things of other stories from other, like, people. The idiocy of...
Dinosaurs were popular.
Yes, but also, like, I'll take it back by even calling them idiots because they are so far in a mental space of wanting to confirm what they think is true that anything that might speak to something different, it's like not something that they can grapple with. Like, I feel like if we're trying to be fair to them, like, that seems to be what's going on, right?
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. That's part of it. And then there's two other reasons that I think we need to be extremely suspicious and critical of the stories that they collected here. Number one, they're relying on translations from Pastor Gene. And we don't actually know how good he was at literally translating what was being said, or how much he was embellishing or manipulating, intentionally or not, to better fit this neo-dinosaur hypothesis. What we do know is that Pastor Gene was 100% on board with the idea of Mokele Mbembe as a real animal, not a folkloric creature, because he's going to become the point person for all the future expeditions throughout the 80s and the 90s. So he totally buys into the whole thing. But the other problem here is the eyewitnesses themselves. We have no way of knowing if they were kidding around or myth-making or anything like that. There might even be something else at play here, because part of the work that Pastor Gene was doing during his time was distributing supplies to these sort of remote outposts. That was one of the ways that he could get Mackle and Powell access to these places. He would say, oh, well, we're going to go and distribute aid to them. So the dinosaur seekers, they end up in a village. They hand out medicine, they hand out supplies, and then people are assembled there, so they ask questions about Mokele Mbembe. And soon, people start coming to them, using those dinosaur stories as inroads to get medicine and supplies. And it becomes, hey, can you give me some more of that anti-malaria medicine? And, oh yeah, my mother totally saw a brontosaurus, right?
But they would give them the medicine even if they hadn't seen the brontosaurus, though, right?
Maybe.
Really?
There's
This seems really dark.
Yeah, so there's a story of Mackle getting, was it Mackle or was it Gibbons? I don't remember if it was Mackle or Gibbons who got really upset and felt that they were not getting the reports that they wanted out of the villagers and refused to give them supplies because he claimed that the villagers were not being truthful with them.
Well, what more do you need to say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In their book, Abominable Science, Daniel Loxton and Donald Prothero had this to say about the methods that Mackle and Powell used to obtain their information.
It is hard to determine how much Mokele Mbembe testimony is based on actual events and how much is based on legends that have been passed down and distorted through retelling. Worse, it is impossible to know how much of the lore of this cryptid has been invented to meet the expectations of foreign guests.
They go on to cite a contact of Powell's who, in 1976, claimed that he had no knowledge of Mokele Mbembe or anything like that. But when Powell and Mackle returned in 1980, that same guy, same man, now claimed he knew exactly what patch of water it lived in and was so familiar with its behavior that he built a hut to study it. And that doesn't seem like the kind of thing you just casually forget and then remember 4 years later, right? Unless you were trying to please this rich foreigner. As far back as Carl Hagenbeck's early 20th century excursions, indigenous people were appeasing foreign explorers through their myth-making. Hans Schomburg, he was a German naturalist who discovered the pygmy hippopotamus in Africa, and he said this.
The pygmy hippopotamus is so cute.
He didn't say
It
that,
is.
but it is very cute.
Oh, so cute. I got so excited that I actually called it a hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus. He said that exactly. That's what he said.
That's what he said. Okay, I'll really say the quote now. The natives, wishing to please the white visitor and hoping for a valuable gift at the same time, are only too ready to assert that they know of an animal in their territory with blue skin, 6 legs, 1 eye, and 4 tusks. The size is entirely up to the questioner. The native will tell them what he thinks the white man wants to hear.
And they ate it up. They ate it up. any denial, anybody who was like, oh, I don't know about a dinosaur, that was treated as reluctance to trust outsiders. And if you were able to convert that person into somebody who was now telling you a dinosaur story, then they thought, oh, wow, we got to their good graces. We're being let in on this secret.
You guys are so dumb.
No, that honestly, it feels so much like religion. Like, we're going to pressure you until you tell us the story that we want to hear. And then when you tell us, like, oh, I believe in God now, there was a miracle now, I had like a religious awakening, they're like, oh, great, now we'll let you like be a part of our group, have our supplies, do our thing, whatever.
Now, neither Mackle or Powell ever saw a dinosaur themselves, but they were certain that Africa held like a lost world, just like the Arthur Conan Doyle story. Even as he was boarding the plane back to Paris, Mackle was planning his second trip so he could continue this search.
These things are so big. These dinosaurs are talking about are so big, and they were there for so long, and they didn't see anything. None of these people who had seen all this shit could not take them to a single dinosaur.
Well, it was either under the water in the lake, or apparently they also have burrows in the mud banks that they sleep in. That's what they were told.
Then go to the mud banks.
Also, what? What do you mean burrows in the mud banks? These are like enormous animals. They're not rabbits. Yeah. Like,
yes.
That doesn't make any sense.
Now, back in the States, Mackle managed to drum up enough attention for his second dinosaur expedition that the National Geographic Society got involved. And Nat Geo agreed to pay him in advance if he published a book on his expedition. So he agreed to do that. He also secured funding from a wealthy Texas businessman named Jack Bryan. Bryan wanted to participate, but unfortunately couldn't because he was apparently allergic to bananas, which sounds like a very made-up reason.
Even if you are, just don't eat a banana.
Yeah.
Or like, don't touch one. I don't know. Like,
they don't slither down from the trees and force themselves into your mouth.
The whole country isn't made of bananas. Like,
I don't know. He was like, sorry, can't do it. Allergic to bananas.
Maybe he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Oh man, I really wish I could. It's just that banana allergy.
Man, I'm gonna use that for things. I like that. It worked for him.
It did. Yeah. Yeah.
That next banana allergy.
Yep.
That friend calls you up and they're like, oh yeah, can you come out to my birthday? You're like, oh, I just can't. I have that banana allergy. Yeah. The second expedition also caught the attention of Herman Regusters, who was an engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. Regusters offered to supply the expedition with surveillance equipment and agreed to join as a tech specialist. Also joining was Richard Greenwell, a UK-based cryptozoologist who Mackle had worked with during his Loch Ness surveillance. Almost immediately, though, trouble started brewing inside this crack team. Herman Regusters published a press release about their upcoming expedition, and in it he blew a whole bunch of details out of proportion and kind of made it seem like they were going in as like swashbuckling Indiana Jones type figures, which was not the impression Mackle wanted to have. He wanted to be taken as a real serious, legitimate researcher. Regusters went so far as to have t-shirts made up for the upcoming Mackle Regusters Dinosaur Trek, which obviously felt very gaudy for Mackle.
Oh, it's so cute. And it was the 80s, so it was probably so corny and
I know.
Oh
I want t-shirts.
I know. I want to see these t-shirts and I want them.
They were totally like those people who go on cruises and then have the matching t-shirts for their whole like group.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I know people make fun of groups when they get t-shirts like that, but if you've got like a big group, that bright orange t-shirt is really showing you where your people are. It's a really easy way.
You're talking like somebody who willingly did the t-shirt thing, Katie.
No, literally never.
Okay.
I just understand the thinking.
Okay.
I would die if that happened to me.
You would die of embarrassment?
I would die of embarrassment because my internal 13-year-old would be like, no. But
Yeah. Mine
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so yeah, they had their t-shirts made up. This causes some strife between Mackle and Regoosters. To try to calm down the hype, Mackle drew up a contract which outlined himself as the expedition leader and detailed everybody's roles and responsibilities. But Regoosters refused to sign and threatened to hold his equipment hostage if Mackle insisted on pursuing this. Mackle did insist on pursuing this, and the two parted ways. I have a suspicion that Regoosters really, really wanted to be more of a featured person on this expedition than just tech guy, you know? The thing is, he was so pissed off that Regoosters actually decided to head his own expedition and launch it at the same time as Mackle's. And so in the fall of 1981, there were not one, but two expeditions in the Congo jungles in search of Mokele Mbembe.
Wow, this has got some major Ghost Adventures Nick Groff spin-off vibes. Like rivalry going on here.
Yeah.
it does. And like, are they taking different paths? Like, what are they doing? Because they're both going to the same lake. Is this a big lake?
Yeah, it's huge. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's good at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're going to different parts of the lake. They're
Yeah,
not like
actually-
camped right next to each other.
Yeah.
Like,
Hilarious.
get out of my mission.
I actually don't think Mackle even made it to the lake in this expedition. I think that he was just talking to as many villages as he could. And Regoosters himself Regoosters definitely went to the lake. Back in the Republic of Congo, Mackle's expedition was joined by Marcelin Anyanya, a biologist who had been appointed by the government to accompany them. And Nyanya was there to not only serve as a translator alongside Pastor Jean, but also be the government-sanctioned scientist. And I kind of think, like, bring these guys back down to earth a little bit. So this team plunged into the Munguma Bay, which is a remote section of the Central African Republic. That borders the Zanga and Doki National Park, which is home to lowland gorillas and tons of elephants. In fact, it's actually called the Village of the Elephants because of the massive quantity of elephants that gather there to feed and drink and find elephant camaraderie. Sometimes there can be as many as 200 elephants wading through these like shallow pools. Mackle's team wasn't looking for elephants, though. When they arrived, he and his translators set up shop and did their usual thing. They're distributing medical supplies, and when people come, they question them about sauropods. The expedition, surprisingly, got very little confirmation. I mean, some people said, oh yeah, I've heard of a Mokele Mbembe, but nobody offered up an eyewitness report, which just stunned Mackle. And he wrote,
I was astonished. Here we were, only a few kilometers from Lake Tele, where a Mokele Mbembe had been killed. Yet these villages claimed to know nothing about it.
Imagine that. I would think that most logical researchers would have taken that at face value, but Mackle refused. Instead, he became convinced that these residents were hiding something from him and pressed even harder and started providing more and more details about it. Like he would talk about its behavior, its biology, its habitats. It's like, oh yeah, they like to dig in the mud. They dig their little burrows and that kind of stuff, right?
Don't give this guy a job at the CIA.
Now, I think he thought that would put him in the villagers' good graces and show that he wasn't an outsider, that he had this like intimate knowledge about this mythic creature. And to aid in these investigations, Mackle ordered his team to distribute beer along with the other supplies, hoping that it would loosen the tongues of these people. And soon the mood changed. More and more people started coming to his aid tent, asking for beer, and suddenly remembering stories that they had heard about this sauropod.
Shocking. Shocking.
The
This is
villagers
like
realized,
no different than Doc Shields and his friends sitting down in the pub making up stories about monsters. It is literally no different. They're like, oh, some dude's giving away free beer? Sure, we'll tell monster stories.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, all you have to do is tell them about a dinosaur. That's it.
If you offer beer to people, free beer, you can get a lot done. You can get people to move your house for you, like get people like beer pizza. I will move your house. I will do lots of things for you for beer.
I know. All of the human race has been Pavloved to be like, oh, you're going to give me free alcohol? I will do this onerous task for you. And making up a story is not even an onerous task.
It's fun.
It's fun.
And they didn't even need to make up the story because remember, he was trying to get in their good graces, so he had already told them everything there was to know about it. All they had to do was repeat his own stories back to him. This was particularly eye-opening for Marcelin and Yanya, the Congolese zoologist. Watching these, frankly, stupid researchers get all giddy about something that was clearly so fake, and Yanya realized that there was money to be made in tricking foolish people looking for cryptids. A contemporary of his would later claim that he continued to lead expeditions for sauropods because
it brings idiots here and makes money.
Yeah.
I love this fucking guy. I love this guy. This is the first smart guy. Well, besides all the villagers that are like, yeah, please give me free medical supplies and beer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, brilliant.
Happy
But this
to
guy-
help.
Yep. See ya, dumbass.
Yep. Now, despite getting all of these people hammered, Mackle left his second expedition kind of disappointed. He'd conducted dozens of interviews at this point, but it seemed like he was always a couple of days behind his quarry. He would be told that Mokele Mbembe had been sighted, it was just around the next river bend, or, it had just come through here a week prior.
This is Doc Shields. This is
totally
the
Doc
journalist
Shields.
talking to him. He goes, I just summoned the creature. I just summoned the beast. Damn, it's on the other side of the island.
It's exactly that. Oh my God. So funny.
But so he was convinced that he was on the right track. He knew he was on the right track, but without the ability to remain in that region for longer, it seemed like, oh man, he's never going to be able to catch up to it. Meanwhile, Herman Reguster's expedition made its way to Lake Tele. There, the engineer conducted a 2-week observation of the lake using all of the equipment that he had repossessed from Mackle's team. Mackle's strategy for this expedition was to cover as much ground as possible, talk to as many people as possible, but Reguster's decided to stay in one place and focus everything he had, cameras, sonar, audio recorders, everything on the lake, in the hopes that maybe they'll catch a glimpse of the sauropod. While observing the lake, one of Reguster's team members caught sight of a creature, and it was described as a long neck-like member of a darker color. The team watched it for about 5 minutes before the object submerged into the lake, but the sighting was witnessed by every single member of the scientific team except for the photographer, so they didn't get any pictures of it.
What was he doing?
I believe he was having lunch. On a separate occasion, Reguster's claimed to have actually recorded the call of a Mokele Mbembe, and he described it.
I'm just kidding. All right, there's actually words. The cry can best be described as starting with a low, windy roar, then increasing to a deep-throated, trumpeting growl. Sounds of a large beast making through the bush were clearly distinguishable as it moved away from us farther into the swamp. The roar recurring in about 5 minutes, and then was not heard again.
That recording is available online, and we will play it now.
I'm listening to what basically sounds like something like a metal thing falling in a building.
Yeah.
Maybe a lion roaring. It's a really poor audio quality.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like much, honestly.
No, it doesn't
Yeah,
sound
it's
like
very
anything.
windy. Yeah, like a wind tunnel almost. It's very strange.
Yeah.
It could even be a wind. It could even be like wind or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But that was his audio recording that apparently was the Mokele Mbembe, although they didn't have any video or photo evidence that it was making that sound. And then finally, after weeks of suffering through, biting flies and brutal humidity, he finally got his capture. A creature broke the surface of the water, and this time the photographer was ready. The head of the animal was only visible for a few seconds before it submerged again, but there was a single photo captured. And that photo shows not a whole lot, honestly. It's kind of an odd, lumpy mass that appears to be shiny in some places and then sort of darkly colored in others. Regoosters claim that it was the split second the creature disappeared, so all you're seeing is the top of its head as it sinks below the water, hence the sort of underwhelming appearance.
That is a hippo.
Or a crocodile. Yeah, that's not anything. Or a rock.
Yeah, or a crocodile.
Honestly, it could also be a rock. I mean, I know they said they saw it in movement, so let's just assume they're telling the truth about that. But it also could be like a rock or a log or something that has water on it, so the sun is shining off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no biologist, but I don't think I can make anything of these. That to me, it does that photo looks like the back of a reptile, either a crocodile or a monitor lizard or something like that.
Yeah, or EJ. I mean, I also could see the right angle. It's like a hippopotamus.
Yeah,
potentially.
It could be a hippo. But when you said crocodile, I was like, oh yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I see why you think hippo though, kind of like a hippo snout, sort of.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know why its back is so high up though, but because they're usually when they're in the water, you just see like their little,
little
you
noses.
just see like their little noses and yeah.
Yeah.
You don't see the whole body the way, or the most, more of the body.
It could be multiple hippos.
Could be
close to each other, and maybe you're seeing parts of each one. But
I think crocodile makes the most sense.
Crocodile seems to make the most sense, I think. Also, I found this out. Monitor lizards tend to swim with their heads out of their water on their extended necks, so they actually look quite a bit like what he claimed to see the first time, the head coming out of the water. Now, despite their dubious successes, Regoosters and Mackle both returned to the United States and published reports of their findings. Mackle authored the book that he was contractually obligated to write, titling it A Living Dinosaur, with a question mark at the end, Living Dinosaur. Regoosters wrote up his article for Caltech's Munger Africana Literary Notes and titled it Mokele Mbembe, an investigation into rumors concerning a strange animal in the Republic of Congo. He misspelled the word republic and wrote it as Republic. It shouldn't have been taken as seriously and as successfully as it was, but it launched a joint venture between Mackle and Bernard Heuvelmans, and in 1982 they founded the International Society for Cryptozoology. Over the next 16 years, the ISC would continue to fund expeditions into Africa to look for dinosaurs and to try to find evidence of dinosaurs. Mackle himself never actually returned, but he passed the torch of his search to a protege, a very devout person, devout in faith, not only in cryptozoology, but in a Christian God as well. But we will talk about him and the very odd relationship between African dinosaurs and their role as mascots for fundamentalist creationism in the next episode.
This is the part of fundamentalist Christian belief that really fascinates me. When they, the day I discovered that they have like a whole dinosaur thing. What is it called? The Creationist Museum.
Yeah.
That blew my mind, and I was like, I just think this is such a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Bringing it into this part of it.
Yeah. And this is the thing, and it's interesting because we will see that it's not just dinosaurs, right? Because there's an aspect of fundamentalist creationism, and particularly young Earth creationism, that wants most cryptids to be real because it undercuts science. And there's this. We'll talk more about it next time. But there's this idea that if you believe in the Bible, and it's not even really the Bible, it's just if you believe in a holy doctrine of some point, of some part, you have to believe in all of it. And if any of it is wrong, then the whole thing is wrong because it's the word of God, right? Mm-hmm. And so that view gets ported to science, in that if some aspect of your scientific understanding is wrong, then all of the aspect of science is wrong. But that's not how science works. But
yes, right. That's a huge misunderstanding of the way science works.
But it makes dinosaurs, still existing dinosaurs, allegedly, very, very useful for young Earth creationists, because that means maybe the Earth isn't as old as you think.
Yeah, that very much so. And it probably, like you said, makes all cryptids like so I guess what you're saying is that if they were able to prove that the Jersey Devil was real, then there isn't much of a scientific explanation as to why the Jersey Devil should be real. So science doesn't work, therefore God is real.
Because you've disproved evolution, because the Jersey Devil would not be a creature from evolution. Right. You couldn't evolutionarily explain why the Jersey Devil was created. Therefore, evolution might be wrong. Therefore, God created the Jersey Devil, because that's the only other explanation.
I also see cryptids, dinosaurs. I see the existence of dinosaurs as super useful for people who take a much more literal version of the Bible and think of the young Earth people, the people who don't want to talk about the fact that the Earth is billions of years old, because that's why they want humans to exist at the same time as dinosaurs. Because if God created the Earth in 7 days and there was Adam and Eve, there's no space.
Yeah, there's just no time.
Mm-hmm. You mean, and by space you mean no opportunity for them.
There's no opportunity for that. So when I was religious, the way that my church got around it was that they would say the Bible says 7 days, but we don't know how long a day is to God, right?
Right.
So because animals were created before humans, the animals were created because because a day doesn't have to literally be 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
The animals could have existed before the humans came.
Yeah, they call that gap creationism, and we'll talk more about that next time, and how that serves as a loophole for a lot of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we actually mentioned it up top too, really early on, the gap creationism.
Fun. I love talking about evangelical Christianity. I think it's super interesting.
Yes, it's fascinating.
So next time we're gonna talk about the origin of young Earth creationism and why African dinosaurs are very useful for young Earth creationist believers. For now, thank you all so much for joining us today. And if you're feeling generous, head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com, click on the Support Us button at the top of the page, and consider becoming a supporter there. You can also check out our merch store, where you can wear your support visually. And until next time, as you go cutting your way through the African jungle on drunk out of your mind on dinosaur beer, be safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials at Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.